All right, so I think we've done all the exercises except number 13. That sound right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do 13, and then there are 4 problems that we're going to go through together, which leaves only 2 problems that you'll have to do on your own. Okay, so in this one, we've got company A and company B. Company A had $10 million of sales, and they had a 45% contribution margin. Normally, what we're used to is you subtract the variable cost to get the contribution margin, but in this case, they just told us what the contribution margin is. It's 45%. So if we multiply that by our 10 million, we get $4,500,000 of contribution margin, right? Fixed costs for this company are $3 million. So let's go ahead and put that in. And we can just subtract the fixed costs to get their net income. Okay, company B has $5 million of revenue. So that's their sales. They have a 20% contribution margin. So 20% of 5 million is 1 million. They've got fixed costs of $500,000. So their net income would also be $500,000. Pretty easy so far, right? Okay. Let's see, then we could look at what their operating leverage is. A, contribution margin divided by B, net income. We take 4.5 million divided by 1.5 million, we get 3. Over here, if we take contribution margin of $1 million divided by net income of $500,000, we get 2. So which company has the higher operating leverage? A. Okay, so as sales go up, A should benefit more. And that's what we're going to do next. We're going to calculate what impact a 25% increase in sales is going to have. That's going to bring company A up to 12,500,000, right? 25% more than 10 million. Their contribution margin, will that also increase by 25%? Yes, it will. So let's take 4,500,000 times 1.25. That gives us 5,625,000. Okay, we just took the number times 1.25 and we got the increased contribution margin. Will their fixed costs go up by 25%? No, they won't. You're right, Alec, because they're fixed, right? So they don't change based on production. Then we can subtract to get their net income. All right. We could get their new operating leverage. We don't really need that, but let's go ahead and just fill in that blank so we can see how things have changed. So if we go contribution margin divided by net income, their operating leverage went down to 2.14. But that's after the 25%, right? It's the first operating leverage based on the original numbers that's going to dictate the percentage change in net income from that 25% increase in sales. We have to do the 25% increase over here as well. So we could take 5 million times 1.25, 6,250,000. Contribution margin will go up to 1,250,000. Fixed costs, we know, stay the same. Subtract those from our contribution margin, and we get a new net income of 750,000. To see our new operating leverage, again, we're going to take our contribution margin, divide it by our operating income or net income, and we'll call that 1.67. So both companies had a 25% increase in sales. For company A, that resulted in net income going up 1,125,000, right? That's the difference between the two. And if we take that increase of 1,125,000 and we divide it by the original net income, our net income increased by 75%. So I took the difference between these two, right? How much the net income went up, divided it by the original net income, and that gave us a 75% increase. But another way I could figure that out, well, can you tell me? What would be another way to figure that out? We had a 25% increase in sales, an operating leverage of 3. We took that 25, what's that? Multiplying? By 3. If we take that increase in sales of 25%, multiply the 25% by the operating leverage, that also gives us 75%. Okay. That's a quick and dirty way to see what the impact is going to be on net income. So we can guess that over here for company B, which also is getting a 25% increase in sales, but they have an operating leverage of 2, their net income will increase by 50%. Let's check. Their net income went up by how much? 250,000. So if we take 250,000, divide it by the original net income of 500,000, we get 50%. So which company benefited the most? A. And in this case, it's very clear that they did because obviously from a dollar amount, they had $1,125,000 of extra net income compared to over here was only 250,000. But also as a percentage of their net income, 75% is better than 50%. So what is the reason that company A benefited more from the increase in sales? Okay. The high operating leverage resulted in a higher change in net income when sales went up. As I mentioned earlier, if sales were going down, it would hurt company A more than it hurts company B. So that's the risk of the high operating leverage. Any questions on this or any of the exercises? All right, so let's move on to the problem set then. We're going to start with problem 3. Okay. So what I'm going to recommend on this one, I don't really like this row right here. It's useful, but I don't like where it is. So I'm going to, you might want to do the same thing if you've got the template open. It's up to you how you want to do it. But to me, it makes a lot more sense if we copy that row and maybe we paste it. I can just paste it right here. Okay. And the reason is this is units sold. This is our total sales, total variable costs. And then all of a sudden we have a per unit amount. Then we have total fixed expenses and net income. So having that per unit in there kind of throws off the flow of everything else being in total dollars. Okay. So I think it's much easier to solve this problem if we change this middle row to just contribution margin. And we move the per unit contribution margin down to the end. Okay. If you don't want to do that, that's okay. Just keep track of what's going on here. So we've got four columns here. We have to fill in the missing blanks or the missing information in each column. The data are coming from up here. So all of that has been copied down. We're going to make this maybe a little bigger. Okay. Let's take it one column at a time. Here we know we sold 600 units, brought in 30,000 in revenue. We see the variable costs. How do we get our contribution margin? Okay, so sales minus variable costs gives us, I think it's 22,800 contribution margin, right? And then if we have 20,000 in fixed expenses, what's our net income? $2,800, right? We just subtract our fixed costs from our contribution margin, we get our net income. That's not so bad. Let's fill this in too. How do we get our per unit contribution margin?
The contribution margin divided by the units.
Yep. We take our contribution margin or total contribution margin, same thing, divide it by units sold. We get a $38 contribution margin per unit. Okay, thank you, Joseph. One column down, 3 to go. With the second column, we can't really start at the top because that's where we're missing information, right? So we have to start at the bottom. We know the contribution margin per unit. We know the net income and the fixed costs. Can we figure out what our contribution margin is? We can. But how? What's that? No. Contribution margin. Well, let's look over here. Here we had contribution margin minus fixed costs gave us net income, right? 56,000. So working backwards, net income plus fixed expenses is our contribution margin. And I think you said 14,000 earlier.
Yeah.
So you were right, but that's our total variable costs, right? That's the difference between sales and contribution margin. It's 14,000. Okay, so we're just having to work backwards. Does that make sense? Okay, then we have to figure out units sold. How can we figure that out?
you do the sales in dollars plus the total fixed costs divided by the printing cost.
The sales in dollars plus the fixed costs. Your last part is right. Dividing by the per unit contribution margin, that part is correct. So what do we have to divide by per unit contribution margin?
By the sales.
If we divide the total contribution margin by the contribution margin per unit, then we know how many units. Right, so if there was a $56,000 contribution margin and it was $80 of contribution margin per unit, that was 700 units. You were on the right track. You almost got it there. Okay, 2 down, 2 to go. This one we're gonna have to work backwards on as well. So let's start here. We had a $10,000 loss, 145,000 in fixed expenses. What must our contribution margin have been? 135,000. Very good. Right? One way you could do that, you could say negative 10,000 plus 145,000 equals 135,000. Good. And then again, we need the difference between these two to know our total variable costs. So it's a difference of 105,000 between them. And we can do the same thing we did last time, right? Which was what?
Per unit.
Okay. So contribution margin divided by the per unit contribution margin gives us 500 units. 3 down. Okay, this last one, let's see. We're missing both contribution margin and fixed costs and sales. Where do we start? Yes, Christian, that is right. Let's find the contribution margin. How can we do that?
Contribution margin on sales.
Well, the problem is we don't have sales, and that would give us the contribution margin ratio. So that's not quite it.
Units sold times?
Units sold times the per unit contribution margin will give us the contribution margin. 900 units at $140 contribution margin each gives us a total $126,000. Okay, so now we could work either direction. I think up is easier to start with. What would our sales be? 270,000. And what would we have to subtract from 126,000 to end up with negative 24,000? 150,000. Okay. And again, one way we could solve that would be negative, let's see, is that right? Negative 24,000, well, we didn't know that. So negative, boy, now I'm confusing myself. Never mind. How did you solve that?
126 there.
Plus 24? Okay, you can do it that way. So 126,000, if you subtracted 126,000, that would bring us down to 0. So we have to subtract another 24,000 on top of that. So 126,000 plus 24,000 gives us 150,000. Okay, so that was fun, right? Okay, any questions on number 3? All right, so we've done number 4. We're going to do number 5 next. Right? Or did we do that already?
Oh,
Okay, we're going to do 5, 6, and 8. Okay. So 5. Okay. I'm not sure, but I'm going to see if I could fit this on a page here. Oops. Insert. Okay, well, at least part of it's on one page. All right, so this company is considering purchasing an oven. The oven's going to cost $2,200. That's a one-time capital expense, so we don't have to calculate that. It's not going to be an ongoing fixed cost, okay? So we'll just ignore that. But it is going to increase their ongoing fixed costs by $59 per period. I think it's per month. And it's going to result in a 10-cent variable cost per cookie. We also want to look at what if we increase price by 20 cents per unit. We think that that will cause the number of units sold to decrease by 25 units because of the higher price. So we are going to look at these 3 different scenarios. One is leaving things how they are. One is only decreasing variable cost and increasing fixed cost. And the last one is the changes in costs, but also the change in price and units sold. Okay. Here are the raw data we have to work with. I'm going to start by just copying this down. So we have $1.75 is the current sales price. We have 40 cents, the variable cost per unit, $1.35 contribution margin per unit. And then fixed, what's that? 405 is the fixed costs. Break even, they already gave us, is 300 units and $525. And I'm just going to put dollars here so it's clear. And then they also said they were expecting 800 units to be sold. Okay, so there's our starting data. Let's add in the things that are changing. So we have fixed costs going up by $59. So instead of 405, it's going to be 464. Oh, I guess that needs a dollar sign too. And here we have the increased fixed costs as well. We also have variable costs going down 10 cents per cookie. So it goes down to 30 cents in both of these scenarios. In the middle column, the sales price is staying the same, but in the last column, sales price is going up 20 cents per cookie, right? And then that's going to decrease our sales by 25 units, which means 800 units in the middle, but 775 in the third column. Everything else we can calculate. So now I'm going to move this down some more to prevent a little bit of scrolling. Okay. The columns don't line up perfectly, but I think you get the idea here of the 3 columns. Let's start by filling in this top part and see what our break even is in these 3 different scenarios. So if sales price is $1.75 and variable cost goes down to 30 cents, our contribution margin per unit becomes what? $1.45, right? Okay, and how do we figure out our break even in units?
It's cost contribution margin per unit.
Exactly. So it'll take 320 units, right? We took our fixed cost divided by contribution margin per unit. Then we can multiply our 320 units by what to get the total revenue? The sales price per unit. So we need $560 in sales to break even. Okay, we can do the same thing over here. We get a contribution margin of $1.65. We divide that into the fixed costs, 281 units. Make sure. What problem are we on? 5?
Yeah.
Okay, they rounded up. All right, we'll round up. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, okay. Because we got 281, so it makes sense to round up to 282. Okay, and then we can multiply that by $1.95 and $549.90. I don't think that was rounded. Let's see. Okay. All right, so we filled in the top part. Obviously, we're most profitable here. That's interesting. Or no, it's not profits, it's break even in dollars. Okay, now it makes sense. Sorry, I think my my brain thinks it's Friday already. God bless you. Okay, this makes sense. So we have the highest break even here and the lowest break even in dollars here. Okay, now we need to figure out what would our income statements look like in each of these 3 scenarios. So if we have 800 units at $1.75 each, that's $1,400 in sales revenue, right? In this third scenario, remember our price went up to $1.95 and our number of units we expect to sell went down to 775. 1,511.25. Okay, variable costs, we've got 40 cents times 800. Should be $320, right? Which would make this 1,080. Is my math right here? And oh, I forgot. Here it's 30 cents. Okay, sorry. 30 cents, that's going to be 240. And 1,160. This also has a 30-cent variable cost, so that's also going to be 240. No, except that there are 775 units. What is it? 132.50. Thank you. Right. Okay. Track that. 1,278.75. Let's see how we're looking so far. $1,080, 1,160, 1,278.75 looks good. Okay, then we get our fixed costs, right? Copy and paste those down. So we get net income of 675 in the first scenario. 696 in the second scenario. And 814.75 here. Okay. See if these are right. Good, okay. So obviously, the third scenario with the higher price and the adjusted costs gives us the biggest net income in this situation. So I hope you were able to follow along. Sorry, I went a little bit fast, but I want to make sure we don't run out of time for the remaining few problems. We're cutting it close. So let's go ahead and move on to number 6. This is like the one we did with the composite units, with the skis and all that, remember? And then we will do number 8. Okay. Number 7 is similar to this one, and number 7 you get to do on your own. So you'll try to follow the same steps for the most part that we're doing here. All right, this company has 3 products, AA, BB, and CC. We got the data here. We have the ratio. And we have the fixed costs. Okay. So to solve part A, really A, B, and C, it's easiest if we just start with part D. Okay, so let's just do D first, and then we'll come in and we'll fill in the other ones. All right, let's move this down a little bit. Okay. Here are the 3 products. We take the sales price for each unit of each product minus the variable cost. We get the contribution margin per unit. We have 20, right? 25 and 20. Here's our ratio. 5, 3, and 2. Okay, so now what we have to figure out is what is our contribution margin per composite unit? We would multiply $20 times 5. If you want, you can make an extra column to keep track of this. Let's see if we could just do it mentally though. 20 times 5 is 100. 25 times 3 is 75. And 20 times 2 is 40, right? So we have $100 plus 75 plus 40. So our contribution margin per composite unit is going to be $215. We could do the same thing to get our composite sales price. Take $50 times 5, that's going to be $250. 40 times 3 is going to be 120. 30 times 2 is going to be 60, right? So our composite sales price is $430. To get our variable costs, now we can just find the difference. Sales price minus contribution margin happens to also be 215. Okay, doesn't always work out that way, but in this case, the variable cost and the contribution margin just happen to be the same. So when you're doing number 7 on your own, what you might want to do is have another column where you figure out, these calculations. Okay. Any question on that? Okay, now that we know that our composite unit contribution margin is $215, we can divide that into those fixed costs, which were $258,000. And we see we need 1,200 composite units to break even. Then that 1,200 goes here, here, here. So that we can calculate how many units of AA we need to sell to break even. So 1,200 times 5. How many units of double B? 1,200 times 3. And how many units of double C? 1,200 times 2. Okay, you with me so far? Then what we need to do, say, okay, we need to sell 6,000 units of double A, 3,600 units of double B, 2,400 units of double C, multiply each one by its sales price. You got 300,000. $144,000 and 72,000. Okay. So we can add this all together. Then we know how much revenue we need to break even. $516,000. For variable costs, it's the same thing. If we're selling 6,000 units of double A, 3,600 of double B, 2,400 of double C, we're going to multiply those by their variable cost per unit. That's 180,000, right? Add those together. Messed myself up. $258,000. Okay, is that making sense so far? I know it's a lot of calculations. Now, if we take our total sales minus total variable costs, that will equal our total contribution margin. And it makes sense that our total variable costs equals our total contribution margin, because remember, variable cost per composite unit equaled the contribution margin per composite unit, right? So it makes sense that they have the same ratio here. Okay, and our fixed costs, we said, were also $258,000. So it looks like we did this correctly, because when we take our contribution margin minus our fixed costs, it equals 0. So we are exactly at break even, which was the assumption. Okay, so as you're going through 7, if you get stuck, take a look back at 6 and realize it should be the same concept, right? Same steps. Okay, we do have a little bit of time for the last problem, but are there any questions on this one before we go to the last one? Okay. This last one is different, and it's kind of a pain in the neck. I always mess it up. Hopefully not today. So let's give this a try. See, Zach. Okay, we've got 2 companies here for problem 8, Jakarta and Maldives. So Jakarta has revenue of 400,000. They have a 40% contribution margin. So 40% of 400,000 should be 160,000, right? And they have fixed costs of 80,000. Jakarta, oh no, that's Jakarta. Maldives has sales of 6,610,000. They have a 40% contribution margin. I'm sorry, 45% contribution margin. So that comes out to $2,974,500. And these are their fixed costs, 1.8 million. Okay. First thing we have to figure out is the margin of safety for each company. In other words, how much are they selling above their break-even point? So let's just fill this all in and that'll give us the answer. Their variable cost here would be 240,000, right? That's the difference. And if we take contribution margin minus their fixed costs, they have an operating income of 80,000. So to figure out break even, we could start from zero, right? Because we know that your break even point is where you make zero profit and zero loss. Would their fixed costs be the same? They would. Which means their contribution margin at break even must also be 80,000. So now what we have to do is figure out what are their sales and their variable costs. Well, the easy way to do it is see that contribution margin is half of what it was before, right? Their break even is half of what they actually sold. So we could apply that concept and say, well, their variable cost must also be half, and their sales must also be half. So their margin of safety, if they needed 200,000 in sales to break even, and they had 400,000 in sales, they have a $200,000 margin of safety. That's how much above their break-even point they were. Okay. Oops, too many dollar signs there. So margin of safety in dollars is 200,000. If we take that number and we divide it by their sales, their actual sales, we get 50%. So their margin of safety as a percentage was 50%. Like I said, I always mess this one up, so let me make sure I'm telling you the right thing there. Is it 50%? It's 50%, good, okay. All right, so that's correct. Oh, and then operating leverage, remember, is contribution margin divided by operating income, right? So if we take contribution margin of 160,000 divided by their operating income of 80,000, we have an operating leverage of 2. Okay, so that one's a little easier. We've got some more difficult numbers over here to deal with. So for Maldives, take their sales minus their contribution margin. Difference is variable costs of 3,635,500. Okay. And we can take contribution margin minus fixed costs. We get 1,174,500. By the way, there is a part B to this problem. We might go a couple minutes over. If you have to go, but I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as I can. Okay, again, to compare their actual performance with their break-even point, we need to start with 0. Their fixed costs would be the same. At break-even, their contribution margin would equal their fixed costs. But here it's a little more difficult, right? Before it was clearly their break-even was half of their actuals, and here it's not as clear. So I'll tell you a little trick we can do here. We know that to get this contribution margin, it's set up here. They had a 45% contribution margin, right? So we took their sales times 45% to get this number. What we can do is take their contribution margin, divide it by 45% to get their sales. Adrian?
When we put that in the calculator, would we put 1.45 or
Just 0.45. Yeah. Yeah. So again, what's that?
why would we do, when would we add the one?
If you're trying to figure out what a 45% increase would be on something, then the 1 is what exists now, and the 45% would be the increase. But here we want just the 45%. So we're going to take our contribution margin of $1,800,000, divide it by 45%, and that way we back in to what their sales would be at break even. And then we can take the difference for their variable costs. Okay. So their margin of safety now is the difference between the 4 million and their actual sales. That's 2,610,000. If we divide that by their actual sales, let's see what we get. $39.49%. I think I actually did that right. Let's look. Okay, they rounded it, but yeah, that's the right number. Oops, wrong one. Okay, so we'll call that 39.5. And then again, to get operating leverage, we take contribution margin divided by operating income. Looks like 2.53. Oh, it's down here. Where is it? In here, so oh yeah, 2.53. Okay, good. All right, so we finished A. Oh, we actually have B, C, and D, but that's all right. We'll get through it here. B says compare margin of safety in dollars between the two companies. So Jakarta had a margin of safety of $200,000. Maldives had a margin of safety of 2.6 million. Obviously, Maldives has the higher margin of safety in dollars, right? I'll put that. Maldives has the higher margin of safety in dollars. C, we can compare the margin of safety in percentage. Well, Jakarta had a 50% margin of safety compared to Maldives had only 39.5, right? Jakarta had a higher margin of safety percentage. Okay, so compared to their break-even point, Jakarta was actually doing better as a percentage of sales. Okay, so D, we need to figure out which company will benefit the most from a 15% increase in sales. Okay, well, obviously it's going to be the company with the higher operating leverage, right? So let's check. If Jakarta has a 15% increase in sales, 400,000, this is where we would do 1.15. So times 1.15, that would bring sales up to 460,000. Our contribution margin is going to increase by 15% as well. So 160,000 times 1.15, 184,000. Fixed costs are going to stay the same as they do, which means our net income is going to be 104,000. That's an increase compared to 80,000 of $24,000. 24,000 divided by the original sales or operating income, I mean, is a 30% increase, which makes sense because it was a 15% increase in sales, 15% increase in sales times an operating leverage of 2 gives us a 30% change in operating income. That worked. Let's do the same over here. We take sales for Maldives times 1.15%. 7,601,500. Their contribution margin also goes up. So times 1.15, we get 3,426,75. Fixed costs stay the same. So we subtract it. We get 1,620,675. Okay, which is an increase in income of 446,175. Right, I subtracted the original income to get that. Make sure that's the right number. Yes, thank goodness. Okay, then last thing we do, we divide that by the original income. $37.99%, or let's 37.99 exactly, okay. Which we take a 39.5%, no, I'm sorry. Forget that. We take a, where's my calculator? Okay, we take a 2.53 operating leverage times 0.15%. We get almost exactly this number. Again, a little bit of a rounding issue. We did it. Okay, first time I've ever done that problem correctly in front of a class in 4 years. Any questions? No? Good. Okay, see you next week.